Good day. My name is Rob Cross. I'm the Global Head of Strategic Programs for Synack. And with me as a guest is the Global Chief Information Security Officer for Accenture, Kris Burkhardt. Kris, welcome.
Hey, thanks, Rob. Great to be here and looking forward to the conversation.
Absolutely. Great to see you again. So just for the listeners, would love for you to introduce yourself and give us a broad overview of your journey just in the tech industry and how you came to the rise of being the global CISO for one of the largest, if not the largest, management consulting company on the planet, Accenture.
Sure. Happy to do that. Well, let's see. Let's start simply with where I am. So I'm Accenture's global CISO. I've been in this role now for 5 years, and I spent the 10 years before that helping to build the organization. My career journey is it's kind of simple and complicated at the same time. Right out of school, I joined Accenture, actually Andersen Consulting, way back when.
Wow. Yeah.
And in Andersen Consulting and Accenture, I've done a number of different roles. My first 10 years, I did a lot of client-facing roles, entirely technology-driven. So a lot of technology architecture, things that we would probably just use frameworks for today. We actually had to develop ourselves back then. So I did some of that. I spent a number of years abroad, both in Tokyo and in Manila. I spent another 5 years with our internal IT group. We called it CIO at the time, but helping move us from Lotus Notes to Microsoft Stack. If you remember,
You just
Lotus
dated
Notes.
yourself there. We won't say it, but
Yeah.
Lotus Notes.
Long time ago. Bob, I started when I was 10, so that's what that was kind of the technical portion. The second half of my career, we realized that we needed a more formal, rigorous approach to information security. We had, I'll call it, pockets of well-intentioned people and goodness, but we wanted to bring that together. So I helped to do that, and then helped build the organization out. And now today I run it. So that's my career journey in brief. I was a technologist first. Many other CISOs, I'd say, generally start from either technology, compliance, or some sort of law enforcement background, right? And so, I'm a technology one. If you're not familiar with it, we're a global solutions and services company. We help companies reinvent by building their digital core, help them unleash AI. And our strategy really is to be the reinvention partner of choice for our clients and also be a great place to work.
So interesting in just my travels and working with yourself and and a lot of your peers, how so many people come from an educational background of like poli-sci and history, because back in the day there was no like information security degrees, but it's interesting to see the educational background for sure. But you rooted in technology.
Yeah, for me, French lit and econ. So
that's
my
incredible.
liberal brothers and sisters out there, critical thinking skills still count.
That's great. That's awesome. So you gave a brief overview of yourself. Thank you. And then a snippet on Accenture, which was part of my next question. But, what are the key priorities of the business currently? And how is your specifically from a security perspective enabling those goals?
Yeah. So, right now, I'd say, look, everybody is talking about AI. And I think if I could just ask the world to step back, maybe a couple of years, I think there's been a lot of effort really trying to implement a lot of the zero trust principles. And to me, what that really means is you've got to have good identity, strong identity, because we're not just on-prem anymore. You're in the cloud, so your identity really becomes your first line of defense. You've got to have strong endpoint protection, good software to ensure that the various devices you use aren't compromised. And then, of course, you have to have a strong transport layer between those things, which really happens a lot by default today. We're really kind of blessed in the sense that Most implementations of HTTP are, modern, they're secure. We all have TLS now, right? Like, so there's a lot of strength there. And then along with that is, you got to have your data organized. You got to have a good, what we often call a digital core.
Mm-hmm.
So those, maybe that technical debt that many companies used to have or still have, where their data is in disparate systems and it's pretty hard to get together and organize. Like, it's important to get through that and resolve that so you can really unleash the power. Which brings us to where we are today. Today, right? I can't believe we've gone 5 minutes and haven't yet mentioned AI, but here we go, right? I mean, that is the big deal right
Yeah.
now. And a good, solid security, I'll say secure, bedrock really does enable the business, because then the business can be confident that the security is going to be there for them, and that they know identity is strong. They know perhaps their cloud posture is strong, and they can then really focus on solving business problems. And today they're solving business problems with AI. So if you don't really have that strong security foundation, you can't launch, right? And like, you need that. You need your data organized. You need a few other things, right, to make that work. Or I'll say from a technological architecture. But like, those foundational points are critical, because AI is just going to struggle, and you're not going to get the benefit of it if you don't have those things in order.
So, I mean, I read your earnings report at the end of the year, and a massive part of your growth was in AI consulting and just getting that into the client environment. You come from those roots. I think there's a lot of people out there deploying AI quickly, and to do something fast and secure is really, really hard. You are the global CISO, so I've always thought of you as really being the corporate side. But are you also saying, in what you just went through, that you also consult with the client facing side? So when your consultants are out there in your client environment, strategizing and deploying AI in their instance, that your organizations helped design the security around that deployment, that you have your tranche, your tentacles in that too, in the delivery side. Are you still connected there?
Yeah, look, I'll say it this way. Organizations that we, that are our clients, they tend to be pretty massive, right?
Yeah.
And consequently, a lot of the stuff that we do is based on patterns, but still bespoke at the end of the day, right? Like, it just has to be to match, the different types of businesses our clients are in. So a lot of what I do, as you say, I am accountable for all of our own corporate security, but I'm also accountable for ensuring that our engagements are run in a secure manner. And I spend about half of my time speaking with clients about our experiences with AI or security tools, or other things. Really, just as a peer. It's not a. It's important that we are practicing what we preach, so to speak. So,
Hmm.
often I'm customer zero for for our security practice and for implementing new patterns or new technologies. AI is no different. We're out there really trying to push the edge on our own use of Gen AI and our own use of agentic AI. And it's actually a lot of fun to speak with clients about what we're doing and hear what they're doing. Right, we're not the only
Yeah.
innovators out there, and really, the kind of the progress you can make by sharing some notes like that is amazing, and it's a lot of fun, frankly.
Yeah, it's fun learning from your customers, as I've learned from working with your organization over the years, for sure. When we talk about, obviously, our company is in the pen testing as a service space. We bring a platform approach, and you've been our client for quite a number of years. Pen testing can be over commoditized, a repetitive exercise for just compliance, where a little is learned and improved over time. It's kind of, you come in, you do a light test, it's great, and then it lives in a spreadsheet, and MTTR, mean time to remediate, teams start to grow. How have you used Synack and its capabilities and its platform approach to not just find vulnerabilities, but meaningfully use the data from it to improve your security posture either overall in your corporate environment, or if have we at all impacted the client delivery side? If you could just talk to those, that would be great.
Let me start with a classic pen test. I think there was a time, and maybe some people are still living in this time, that a penetration test was a regulatory compliance kind of requirement, and you had to do one once a year, and you had to check the box. And I think it was part of maybe an ISO certification or a SOC 1, SOC 2 certification. Regardless, your customers wanted to know that you did it. And I think while that served a purpose a long time ago, it really doesn't harness the power of what pen testing can really do. Um, for us, right? So we have an entire attack surface management team, right, that looks at um, how we're vulnerable from from the outside looking in, whether that's through vulnerabilities or configurations or I'll say poorly configured software. There's all sorts of vectors that pen testers can use, and so for us, pen testing, and I'll talk about Synack here a little bit, right? It's a learning experience for us, right? Every finding we get is a chance to understand, like, how did that come about? How do we prevent it? How do we test for it ourselves, right? So that we can use your time and our time more effectively, because that is the short commodity here. And it is, it's really a um, a circle, right?
Mhm.
Of a flywheel where we learn from the mistakes that we made, and then we go back, we understand where they were introduced in the process, and we look to prevent them, and we also look for testing to find them again. Um, and by testing, what I really mean is think more in terms of scanning, right? So
Mhm.
testing that we can automate and run, every day against our addressable IP space, right? So that's how we look at it. I think about our experience, Rob, together, right?
Mhm.
When we first started looking at it, you had a perspective of education, and that perspective was correct. But I think, in your mind, we were thinking about it more as an education for individuals.
Mhm.
And we really need to think about it more as an education for the organization. Like, how do we make the organization as an organism kind of smarter? And the way that we did that was to do that analysis and prevent the stuff, and then scan for it over time. And we actually, and I'll stop blathering on here in just a moment. One of the biggest things that you guys were able to find for us is, there are, in the complexity of the, like, many web apps we have, buried deep within them are the occasional unauthenticated object, like, that should be behind authentication. You were able to find those, and that really opened our eyes to a different issue. And we actually built an entire scanning tool to go find all those, on our attack surface. So, now I think when you guys look for those, it's pretty rare that you find one, and it's especially rare when you find one that we didn't already know about. So it's like, that's just one use case that you helped us learn and helped us prevent future problems. So I think, used correctly, pen testing is a super powerful tool. Used incorrectly, it's just a waste of your money.
I think a lot of folks look in the beginning of what you're talking about. Pen testing is really just a compliance destination, and the journey ends there. And for the audience, Kris and I have been having this conversation for 5, 6 years. That really, the journey of transformation starts at testing, because, and what Accenture I think has done really beautifully, if I can say that, is you've looked at the what we find and you've gone back and understood the why. And the why is really interesting, which I skipped over a little bit. And most people don't know this, but you have a very transient workforce that
Yeah.
is different than any one of my clients. And when Kris and I started having this discussion, he kind of said, listen, I can't control left of me. We have a very transient workforce. So going from what we find to ideating on what's the why and the root cause, and how do we build mitigating measures, your own technology to engineer that out. So when we test, we find nothing, as a trust but verify versus a real technical backstop of a catch-all, I think was really just amazing. That is the way testing should be used, is learning and root cause and mitigating your engineering process that's causing failures before it gets to testing. Testing should be driving to zero, and you guys have done that in one particular category for sure.
Yeah,
So that was
I completely agree, and I'll argue a little bit. I wouldn't argue. I wouldn't say that we have a particularly transient workforce. Just we have a big workforce.
yeah, okay, sure.
So
Thank you.
so when you think about us, right, just to put it in numbers, right, we employ about 800,000 people globally.
Yeah.
So if we turn over just 10%, it's
Yeah.
80,000 people, right?
Yeah.
So it's it makes for it makes a situation where you can't train your way out of a problem. Like it's like people behavior and people
Mhm.
training is just one part of the solution, but you really have to have other controls in place to get those guardrails up. Sorry, not to be argumentative, but just
No. I appreciate you qualifying that, because to me, it's like at 10% is like, oh, that's not probably in HR standards. That's probably small, but the scale of your
yeah,
company,
it's
when it hit my ears, I was like 80,000 people. Like, oh
all
my,
large
like,
numbers.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's like exactly. That's like a Fortune whatever company, and it goes in and goes out. But to your scale, it's like, yeah, but it's only 10%. Totally. I
it's
thank you for qualifying that.
five of the hometowns that I grew up in.
That's true. Okay. Accenture, you guys have publicly committed to train over 500,000 people on Gen AI, which is, I think, is really on Gen AI fundamentals, which is a massive commitment. How is your team currently using AI? And also, if I can ask, have you seen an increase in vulns as AI becomes more prominent in your adoption internally? Like I'm hearing like, hey, Claude Code, and let me call that tool out in particular, but vibe coding, like you can code faster, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's more secure. And I'm just curious on both ends of that, what your perspective is.
Well, a couple thoughts. So, we've been at this journey for a little while now. I think we had, as a company, I think our bookings for Q1 this year were our AI bookings were, over north of 2 billion. So,
Wow.
that's out of, I'm not going to get the number exactly right, but that's out of, roughly 20-ish billion in bookings. So, over 10%, right? Which I think is good. And we've already deployed over 3,000 agents, right? So we've been doing this for a little while. I think, not that anybody's doing it for a long while, but we've got our feet underneath us on this. So a couple of thoughts that I'll say. Um, how are we using it? So my organization, we like many information security groups out there, we're really reliant on the vendors to kind of uh, get useful AI out there into their products, and that's starting to happen. Um, and that's like really the scaling that we need. But for a lot of other activities like that, we're not scanning our entire IP space and all those things. For other more pointed activities, and I'll say like level 3, level 4 type activities, we're using a couple of things. Like many other people, we're using AI for enrichment of incidents. So as we see them, we're using AI to look for use cases that traditional SOAR automation components, rule-based SOAR won't necessarily pick up, but AI might. So we're starting to look at that. We've used AI to help automate our web application testing, right? That's a space that has traditionally taken some expertise to do
Mhm.
to go understand how to go down all the branches of a web app and really look for all the things that you need to look for. We have an agentic approach now. It's actually kind of a master organizer agent that uses 6 other agents to go through and do testing against an application. I won't say it's quite comprehensive yet, but it's very good if you're just an individual developer and you want to like knock out most of the problems and make it easier for your final QA, right? Like, so we're doing a number of things like that. We're also using a lot of Gen AI. We need to make sure that in the contracts that we have with clients that both parties have thought about security properly, and we have the right we have the right clauses in there to ensure that security is covered either by us or our client and governed properly. And so Gen AI is very good at picking out those clauses, no matter the specific language that was used. So we're seeing it in a number of places. How are we securing it? So that's a harder question. Over the last couple of years, um, we have rolled out this whole responsible AI program. It looks at AI from a number of different angles. The ethics, for example, looks for bias, and security is also one of those angles. So we ensure that the applications that use those and the data that feeds into them and sort of the prompts and the outbound messaging, back like in the Gen AI, like when we were mostly talking about Gen AI, we make sure that all of that is safe and secure. With Agentic, I'd say we're a little less mature in the sense that the technology is moving so fast with MCP and with some of the coding tools that really help you just rip out agents like nobody's business. And so we have a few tools that we're working on. We have a registry that we've rolled out. And so I'd say we're as mature as anyone in that space right now, but the whole market needs to mature in that space. Like there's work to be done there. So we've been, in the meantime, we focused on the things we can control, right? Which is access. So back to my earlier point, identity, authorization, access, super critical. That's even more true in agentic land. And we spent a lot of time ensuring that the people are thinking about the data stores and the APIs and whatnot that their agents can access. Because agents, unlike you and I are going to realize, Rob, when we've stumbled across some data that we probably shouldn't have access to.
Right.
An agent is just not going to think about that. So it's really critical that as people use agents for tasks that they themselves used to do or would expect a colleague to do, that they think about the security aspect there. My final point on this is I'll say that we've talked to a lot of the big security companies and a lot of the smaller startups in the last 6 months about different ways to secure agentic and MCP. And I'd say there's a lot of answers out there that are coming, and I'm hopeful that we'll get a little bit more clarity here in the next month or two about how things are going to shape up a little bit. We're starting to see common forms, common language, and all that. Just like we did in the security world 10 or 15 years ago, people started to talk, speak a common language. So it's promising.
Yeah, I'll maybe circle back on that towards the end if we have time. I was recently at a Capital Summit or CISO Summit sponsored by Intel, and I was definitely in a room of folks at your level, which was amazing. I was not the smartest one in the room for sure.
I don't think I'm the smartest one in this room.
No, I think you are. But one of the hot topics that if we have time, I'd love to get your thought on is how do you see, never before in history has it been scary that one of the CISOs says that RBAC is pretty much dead, that AI, one person with AI can exfiltrate IP at a rate in 15 minutes that could out of a company. And how do you control that when someone in accounting that needs AI to be more efficient but has full access, that AI has full access to things I wouldn't have access to or he or she didn't have access to. So we can circle back on that. So I'll get your thoughts. And well, the general thought was what keyed that is the thought was the security industry hasn't caught up to it yet. There was full confidence that we as an industry will. We always do, but that we're a little bit behind the power curve, that it's just accelerating so fast. It's every 2 weeks. It's like it's a new generation. It's like it's at crazy speeds.
You're not wrong.
Yeah. So let me shift focus. One of Synack's superpowers, and still is today, is we offer a continuous manual offensive security engagement where we just never stop testing. And it's one part of our portfolio that Accenture has leveraged. Just curious, what were some of the core things of value that you thought that that brought to the table and why your team decided to employ continuous methodology on testing some of the assets for you?
Yeah, so let me say a couple things about that because we didn't really talk about, you asked, but I think I didn't respond about AI powered attacks
Mm,
and some of the things we see out there. One that I want to call out, and I won't necessarily assume it's AI powered, but it's one that we've seen in the last year, and that is really the 0 day attack. Um, in the last 12 to 24 months, 0 day attacks have taken on a very different aspect than they did beforehand, um, in the sense that threat actors now have infrastructure, let's call it 0 day engines, that they can
yeah.
load their 0 day into and just hit as many potential targets as possible in the least amount of time. And they just load them up with web shells that they can come back to later. Uh, and you can think of a potentially even more of a doomsday scenario where you know, they load them up and just want to burn down the world, right? Like you could see
Yeah.
that happen. So I think it's important to recognize that. And it's important to recognize that our defenses, have to change, and they have to account for that style of attack. And there's lots of ways to address that. But one way, a straightforward way, is what you guys are talking, or what you're talking about, which is this continuous pen testing. Um, Continuous pen testing, I think, really helps with a number of challenges. 0 days being one of them, because you're constantly looking for weaknesses, and often 0 days will link several weaknesses together.
Hmm.
So if you can break that chain by just addressing one, that's great. The other side of that coin is teams are always releasing code. They're
Yes.
releasing, and with that code, they may be unknowingly releasing vulnerabilities. Um, we've all seen the page where they will release code, they'll fix a vulnerability, and then with their next major release, they'll release that old vulnerability again because
Yes.
fixed it in the original, right? That happens.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's even the best coders and software companies out there are guilty of that. Like we've seen that, many times. So it's a challenge.
Yeah.
And having somebody, doing continuous pen testing is going to find those, right? It's going to find those right away. So, um, if you can focus a number of testers who are constantly looking and, honestly trying some of the same tests over and over again, like that's kind of the point, but also trying new ones on your most critical assets, I think you can dramatically reduce your risk of compromise in multiple scenarios. So, uh, gone are the days where you can do your monthly scan and like that's probably going to be good enough. You
Yeah.
need to do, I think, far more than that. For us, I know like there we do constant scans. We have other scans that we do hourly, right? We have other scans we do daily. I don't think we have anything we do monthly anymore, right? So it's just not happening. I think having uh, a group like yours attacking us, um, to help us constantly really helps prevent the bad guys who are attacking us constantly. Protects against the bad guys who are attacking us constantly from finding something that you didn't already find, right? So it's a smart thing to do.
Yeah. I mean, we've had this conversation. There's two ways to look at it. It's the attacker exposure time, right? The vulnerabilities out there and the time to find, and then the time to identify and the time to fix is you got to take that off the market.
Yep.
Um, this waterfalls into my next question to you is when we talk about different KPIs and measuring risk and translating that into business impact, I know is a key concern of a CISO and your peers. How has your approach to measuring and communicating continuous security improvement, a very Kaizen type of approach of always, iterative, incremental evolvement, to ensure the executive team understands? So this way, and this way. What are you measuring as KPIs to help you deliver that message of risk and business impact, and we're counting what counts? And how have you communicated that?
Yeah, I mean, look, we do measure, um, we do measure. time to remediation, right? That's one of the metrics that we look at. But the way that we really look at it is we want to make sure that people remediate. Um, we want to make sure that people remediate stuff within a given time limit. Like there are that's for most stuff. The reason that's important is it's a target that people can understand and hit, right? So it's hard to convince a development organization, hey, we want to collectively lower our average mean time to remediation from, I don't know, 26 days to, 14. So try harder. It's
Mhm.
much easier to tell them you got 7 days. Like it's got to be fixed in 7 days. If it's not 7 days, right, we've got a problem, right? And then I can measure how many they don't fix in 7 days, which it gets you to the same thing as long as you're willing to work with them to continually lower that threshold until it gets to a period you like. We also like many other companies, we also have an emergency remediation um, regime where like we just want to fix something as fast as possible, right? That's some of those 0 days fall into that as they do for many other companies.
Is that like a tiger team that's separate that goes in, or are you saying that's just a
No,
process saying, oh,
um, so the way that we do it is we maintain very good communication and very clear communication and expectations with our many groups of developers, and we just reach out directly to them and track to closure when they fix these things, right?
okay,
Like that's what we do. So we will, we've instrumented our entire attack surface, and so we'll look for all the places we have a particular 0 day. We do that very quickly, and then we reach out to the teams that own that, the particular places, and tell them they got to fix it quickly, and then work with them to get it fixed. We'll support them, but they know it's a big deal and they're on it, right? That's part of the agreement that we have with them. But getting back to your metrics question, the other one though that I actually care probably more about is how many times do we repeat vulnerabilities, right? Like that's the one that I really care about. So
yeah,
when you guys in your pen testing, when you find something novel, there's a new vulnerability out there, and it's maybe an even different style of vulnerability that we haven't seen before. Um,
mm,
that's you know maybe it's not even on MITRE, or it is a kind of a unique implication of a MITRE vulnerability, right? I want to measure how well we prevent that vulnerability from showing up again. Like for me,
yeah,
that's a big deal. Like I want to make
yeah,
sure that we're not repeating it, because um, it's one thing to, in blissful ignorance, introduce a vulnerability that nobody really knew about. It's an entirely different thing to repeat that over and over again. And that's what I really, really want to prevent. And so that's, we measure that. We look at repeats, and we look at, teams that are, have make the mistake that I spoke about before, where they reintroduce vulnerabilities with major releases, those types of things, right? So that's a metric that I care a lot about. So I think both are important, but I think if you just focus on mean time to remediation only,
mhm.
you're setting yourself up for a lot of bad deja vu.
I can need to take a tangent there because this, I need to ask a question. So
Yeah.
it's such a large organization, you come across that use case. Can you cite any examples like that you're able to talk to on, like when you find that, how do you incent the behavior to change so it doesn't get repeated? Do you have like gamification? Is it more of an awareness thing? Do you produce like internal and you push it to the groups? How do you prevent it from recurring?
Yeah, we
Do you
share
have a
the
formal
feedback,
program?
right? Like
Oh, okay.
we have the concept of a reopened vulnerability, right? So we can tell people like, hey, you've had a lot of reopened ones. Like you need to think about how you're releasing your code or your configurations, right? So we look at that, and it's a let's call it friendly conversation. It's not a I don't. Uh, I don't scorecard people on it in the same explicit way that I do some of the other things, only because I haven't needed to, right? Because it's sort of one of those things where I pointed out to somebody, and they're happy to fix it because they also don't want to have to repeatedly fix the vulnerability in production.
So you find a problem in team one, and it's an
Yeah.
acute problem. You go and make them aware of it.
Yep.
If you start to see the same problem across n number of teams, then your communication becomes much more broader. If
Yeah,
you
sure.
find it on a yeah,
Yeah, we can do that. I would say though, the repetition point, it's pretty
mm,
rare that it's broad based. Like if
okay,
it's broad, usually something else going on that's
yeah,
causing that vulnerability to repeat. It's usually it is, 9 times out of 10, it's a team that's not being as careful with um, code check-ins and I'll screw up the technical terminology, but
that's
you know
okay.
putting the fix into all the code branches
Yeah,
properly, right?
yeah,
It's just that it's that kind of there might be one person on the team that wasn't doing it right, and we
yeah.
point it out, they fix it, and we're fine.
So let's just slightly change gears to you go and meet with the board. Is the
The
board
other gift of communication.
yeah. How do you communicate risk? And is when you get up and do your presentation, do you just get sucked down the rabbit hole of AI, and securing, and what are the guardrails you're putting in place, and like what is that, and how do you succinctly communicate risk to where? Yeah, just I'm just curious. Like I could go on and on, but you understand what I'm asking is like
Yeah. So
what's your
look,
methodology on that?
I get this question a lot, and we saw this 20 years ago with financial expertise on boards. There's still a dearth of cybersecurity expertise on boards, right? So a lot of my colleagues ask, like, how do I communicate with the board? So look, boards want to know. Boards are, you have to remember, boards are a governance structure. They want to know that you have uh, a control system in place and that control system is effective. Like that's what they want to know. And so the way that I talk to our board about risk is I talk to them about it very much in business terms, right? So we have at Accenture, we have different types of risk areas that are, unique to us, and they're going to be different than, I don't know, an automotive company's risk areas
Hmm.
or, capital markets companies' risk areas, right? So we put it in terms they can understand in terms of like in business risk, and I don't dive into, I don't give them like, hey, we had, 2 million vulnerabilities that we fixed, right? Or, like
Yeah.
they don't want to know that. What they want to know is, are we meeting our SLAs? Are we doing what we need to do to keep our client engagement secure, our firms, technology secure? Are we securing our acquisitions properly? Right. That's what they really want to know and understand. So I tend to roll up my metrics into that control framework. And I also talk about the control framework, right? Much like we spoke about earlier with pen testing, we are a learning organization.
Hmm.
And I share stories with the board about, um, usually they go something along the lines of, hey, company X had a problem. The root cause of that problem at company X was, A, B, and C, right? I don't know, perhaps they didn't have strong service desk controls and they gave out a password they shouldn't have. What we do at Accenture to prevent that problem is this, right? Here's how we do service desk controls, and here's how we think about it, and here are the controls that we have in place. And so with um, some anecdotes like that, I can make the rest of the control system really come alive for them, and they can understand the control set that we have and how we think about it. Um, and then when we get into questions, it's much more along the lines of what do we think about this risk area, or how do we control for that risk? I'm on the board of this other company. We had a problem over there. Like, would we ever have that problem here? Right. So it becomes a much more of a conversation like that. And yeah, AI is part of it, but I think the board talks to many of my other executive colleagues about AI quite a bit. And maybe by the time they get to me, they're a little they're a little more AI. I don't know. It's a
Yeah.
big topic for everybody. So in all seriousness, of course we address it, like we talk about it, but it's not a. It is from a security perspective. The fun part of AI, I think, is enablement. The not so fun part is defending against it. And the answer to that is really, you just have to be better and faster and move at AI speed. And that
Yeah.
means getting, I referenced it earlier, getting some of those extra controls in place that you're going to want to have to defend yourself against AI powered attacks.
Yeah. Yeah. I really appreciate the fact that you're spending time with Synack and with us and commenting on how you lead a global organization. It's just been wonderful being a partner with you and seeing how you all have just evolved. And I've learned from your organization for sure. I know you're a busy person, so thank you so much for the partnership, the continued trust, and certainly for your time this afternoon. And I look forward to seeing you when I come to Chicago next time. So thank you so much for your time, Kris.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, Rob. I'll say the same thing. You guys have been a wonderful partner for us over the years. We've learned a lot from you as well, and you have caused change for good within our organization, right, and continue to do so. So, we love that, and great conversation today. And yeah, look forward to our next breakfast downstairs.
Awesome. Thank you so much.